The first time Emma heard the phone ring, she thought it was a prank. She was alone in her apartment on the 12th floor, late at night, her laptop glowing faintly on the coffee table. The city outside was unusually quiet, its hum muffled by the autumn air pressing against her windows. She hadn't owned a landline in years, and her cell phone was right beside her, silent. Yet the shrill, mechanical chime echoed through the apartment like it had been pulled from a different decade. She froze, listening. The sound came from the corner of the living room, where an old rotary phone sat on a shelf. She had bought it at a thrift store weeks ago, mostly as decoration. It wasn't plugged in. The cord dangled loosely, cut clean at the end, unable to connect to anything. She had laughed at the irony when she first set it up, a dead phone in a home that didn't need one. But now it was ringing. Her pulse quickened as she crept toward it. The bell's metallic rattle didn't falter. With each shriek, it seemed to grow sharper, slicing into her nerves. She reached out and, hesitating, lifted the receiver. The ringing stopped. She pressed the cold plastic to her ear. For a moment, there was nothing, just a hollow silence, as though she were listening into a tunnel that stretched far underground. Then a voice broke through. "Hello," it said. Emma's throat tightened. The voice was her own. Not exactly. The tone was strained, hoarse, cracked with fear, but unmistakably hers. "Who is this?" she whispered. There was a long pause. On the other end, the voice mirrored her hesitation, then repeated, trembling, "Who is this?" Her knees weakened, and she nearly dropped the receiver. She wanted to hang up, to slam the phone down and forget the sound, but something held her there. The silence on the line became unbearable. Then the other Emma spoke again. "You don't know me yet, but you will." Her stomach lurched. "What do you mean?" The voice trembled like someone standing outside in the cold. "I don't have much time. Tomorrow night, it happens." "What happens?" Emma asked, her words rushing out, her breath fogging against the plastic. A faint static hissed between them, like waves crashing far away. The other Emma's voice thinned, stretched, as though it were being pulled apart. "They're coming." The line went dead. Emma stood frozen, her hand gripping the receiver so tightly her knuckles ached. The silence in her apartment pressed down, heavier than before. She replaced the receiver, staring at the useless cord dangling beneath the shelf. Her rational mind scrambled for answers. Maybe it was a recording built into the phone somehow. Maybe someone had wired it to her building's intercom as a joke. But the voice had been hers. Every inflection, every quiver. Her phone buzzed suddenly on the table, and she flinched. The glow of a new notification lit up the screen. Wednesday, 11:59 p.m. When she checked again, it read, Thursday, 12 a.m. Her heart thudded painfully. The call had come exactly at the moment the day shifted. The phone only rang when tomorrow arrived. She didn't sleep that night. Every sound seemed amplified. The refrigerator's hum, the creak of the building settling, the occasional distant siren. She kept glancing at the dead rotary phone, its round dial gleaming faintly in the dim light. Her mind replayed the words over and over. Tomorrow night, it happens. By morning, she convinced herself it had to be some elaborate prank. Maybe the thrift store had sold her a novelty phone with a built-in recording triggered by a timer. She resolved to return it. But when she dialed the shop's number, she got only a hollow tone. "This number has been disconnected." When she visited in person later that day, the shop was shuttered. The windows were boarded up, the sign faded. Neighbors she asked insisted it had been closed for years. That was when the dread began to burrow deep. She returned home, the weight of unease dragging at her steps. She set the phone in a box and pushed it into her closet, hoping out of sight would mean out of mind. But midnight approached again. She sat rigid on her couch, the silence pressing in. Her phone read 11:58 p.m. Her chest tightened. She told herself it wouldn't happen again. She was imagining things. 11:59, the seconds crawled. 12 o'clock. The rotary phone shrieked from inside the closet. Her blood ran cold. It rang louder this time, each metallic clang rattling against the walls. Her hand shook as she pulled open the closet, the box trembling as the sound poured out from within. She lifted the lid. The phone sat in the darkness, vibrating slightly with each chime. Against every instinct screaming at her, she lifted the receiver. The ringing ceased. Emma. It was her voice again, but this time it was ragged, frantic. I don't have long, the other Emma said. Listen carefully. You're not safe. They're watching you already. Emma's throat went dry. Who's watching me? Tomorrow night. Don't open the door. No matter what you hear. Promise me. Her hands trembled. I don't. The voice cut her off. Promise me. Emma clutched the receiver tighter. I promise. There was a ragged breath on the other end. Then good. Maybe this time it will be different. The line went dead. Emma dropped the receiver back in a box, slamming the lid shut. Her chest heaved, her breath shallow. The room seemed to tilt, her vision blurring at the edges. She stumbled to the couch, burying her face in her hands. What did this time mean? Why had her voice sounded like it was fraying, collapsing in on itself? And who were they? As dawn crept over the skyline, Emma sat sleepless, her promise echoing in her mind. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring, only that something was coming, and it had already begun. Emma tried to carry on with her day as if nothing had happened. She drank coffee, answered emails, even forced herself to go for a walk around the block. But the world felt different now, thinner, like the air itself was holding its breath. Every reflection made her uneasy. Every stranger's glance lingered too long. She kept thinking about the words from the phone. They're watching you already. When she returned home that evening, she found the box in the closet shifted slightly. She hadn't touched it since shoving the phone inside. The lid was crooked, the cardboard edges frayed, as if someone had tried prying it open. She told herself it was her imagination. Maybe she had left it like that. Maybe the weight of the phone had tugged the box askew. But as she pushed it deeper into the closet, she couldn't shake the feeling of invisible eyes following her. The hours crept toward midnight. Emma sat in her living room with every light on, her phone in hand, the television muted. The digital clock on the cable box glowed brighter with each passing second. 11:59 p.m. Her palms grew slick with sweat. 12 Uhr nachts. The shrill ring exploded from the closet. Emma flinched, but she didn't hesitate this time. She darted to the closet, yanked the box open, and grabbed the receiver. The ringing died instantly. Her own voice came through again, shaky and urgent. Emma, listen. Don't leave your apartment tomorrow night. No matter what you hear, no matter how much they beg, don't open the door. Emma's breath caught. Who? Who's going to beg? The voice faltered like static warping around it. You'll see, but they're not who they seem. They'll use the faces you trust most. Emma's stomach dropped. You said they're watching me, she whispered. Where? Who are they? On the other end, silence. Then the sound of heavy breathing, like someone running. Finally, her voice returned, strained with terror. I can't stop it, Emma. Not yet. But maybe you can. Stop what? A low hum began on the line, mechanical and unnatural, like gears grinding together. It grew louder, swallowing the other voice. Just before the connection cut, Emma heard her own distorted whisper. They're here. The line went dead. Emma stood frozen. The phone pressed to her ear, her pulse thundering. Her apartment seemed smaller now, the walls tighter. She set the receiver down slowly, her hands trembling. She couldn't call anyone, not with a story like this. Who would believe her? Her best friend Sarah would laugh it off. Her brother would tell her to see a doctor. But the voice was hers. She couldn't deny that, and it was warning her. The next day dragged on like a fever dream. Every sound startled her. The creak of floorboards above, the elevator doors clanging shut, the faint voices of neighbors through thin walls. She kept glancing at her phone, half expecting it to ring in the daylight, but stayed silent. By dusk, the paranoia became unbearable. She locked every door, every window, and dragged a chair beneath the front door handle. Still, the words replayed. They'll use the faces you trust most. As the city outside slipped into night, Emma sat in the living room, clutching her phone. Her reflection in the darkened window looked pale, hollow-eyed, a stranger staring back. 11:59 p.m. Her chest tightened. 12 a.m. The rotary phone screamed again. Emma rushed to the closet, ripping open the box, her hands slick with sweat. She pressed the receiver to her ear, but this time no voice answered. Only static. Harsh, jagged static, rising and falling like a storm. Beneath it, she thought she could hear faint whispers, layers of voices overlapping, too many to count. Some wept, some laughed, some pleaded. Emma's heart pounded. She pressed the receiver tighter. Hello. Through the chaos, one whisper cut clear, sharp enough to chill her blood. Let us in. She dropped the receiver, the voice still hissing faintly from the box. Her legs nearly buckled as she stumbled backward, slamming the closet door shut. Her apartment felt colder now, shadows clinging to the corners. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps on her front door. Emma's heart leapt into her throat. She crept toward the peephole, her breath uneven. On the other side stood Sarah, her best friend. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, her coat wrapped tight, her face etched with worry. Emma. Sarah's voice called softly through the door. It's me. Please let me in. Emma's hand hovered over the lock, her pulse racing. Sarah lived across town. She hadn't told her anything about the phone. How could she be here now, at midnight? Emma, Sarah pleaded again. I know you're scared. Just open the door. Her words were calm, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Even through the peephole, something about her face looked wrong, subtly distorted like a mask stretched too tight. Emma backed away from the door, her mind spiraling. They'll use the faces you trust most. The knocking grew louder, more insistent. Emma, please. I'm freezing out here. Her chest heaved. She clutched her phone, her thumb hovering over Sarah's contact. With shaking hands, she dialed. The call rang. On the other end, Sarah answered, her voice groggy with sleep. Emma, why are you calling me so late? Emma's knees weakened. She stared at the door, at the figure still knocking, smiling unnaturally. Her Sarah was at home. Whoever stood outside wasn't her. Emma dropped the phone in shock, the call still faintly audible from the floor. She stumbled backward, tears welling in her eyes. The knocking had stopped. Silence hung heavy in the apartment. Then, slowly, the doorknob began to turn. The doorknob twisted slowly, as if tested by an invisible hand. Emma pressed her back against the far wall, her nails digging into the plaster. The chair she'd wedged under the handle groaned, holding against the pressure. For a moment, the sound stopped. Silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. Then came the voice again, Sarah's voice, soft and coaxing. Emma, please open the door. I need you. Emma's stomach turned. The words were tender, but the tone was wrong. Hollow, calculated. It was like listening to someone recite emotions they didn't understand. The doorknob rattled violently. The door shuddered against its frame, each strike making Emma flinch. She pressed her hands over her ears, her breath coming in ragged bursts. Then suddenly it stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. Emma stood frozen, straining to hear. Her apartment seemed to expand in the quiet, every shadow deepening, every creak amplified. She risked a glance through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No Sada. No one all. Her heart hammered. She stepped back, her legs weak, and nearly tripped over her phone still lying on the floor. She picked it up, but the call with the real Sarah had ended. The screen was dark, her reflection faint in the glass. She wanted to believe it was over, that the knocking was just some cruel hallucination. But her gaze slid inevitably toward the closet. The box sat inside, its cardboard edges trembling faintly, as though something inside it still lived. Emma forced herself to close the closet door and retreat to her bedroom. She locked it, shoved a chair under the knob, and crawled into bed fully clothed. Her body shook, exhaustion gnawing at her, but her mind refused to quiet. They'll use the faces you trust most. Her own voice, her future self, had said that, and it had been right. At some point, fatigue dragged her into shallow sleep. She dreamed of static hissing in endless darkness, of countless hands pounding against unseen doors. She dreamed of her own face staring back at her, whispering words she couldn't understand. She woke to the sound of ringing. Her eyes snapped open, her body rigid. Morning light seeped faintly through the curtains, but the ringing was sharp, insistent. Emma bolted upright. The rotary phone. But it was too early. It wasn't midnight. She stumbled out of bed, her legs heavy, her throat dry. The sound came from the closet, muffled but unmistakable. She yanked the door open, pulled the box onto the floor, and lifted the receiver. The ringing stopped. Emma, the voice was faint, distorted, like it was being pulled through water. Emma clutched the receiver. Why are you calling now? It's not midnight. A pause. Then, time is breaking. Her chest tightened. What do you mean? You've already changed things. They're angry. Emma's breath caught. Who are they? Static surged, drowning out the reply. Beneath it, Emma heard whispers. Too many voices layered on top of each other, each murmuring her name. Her skin crawled. The static receded enough for one phrase to cut through. Don't look in the mirror. The line went dead. Emma stared at the receiver, her reflection faint in its black plastic surface. Slowly, she turned toward the mirror above her dresser. Her reflection stared back, pale and trembling. For a moment, it seemed normal. Then, as Emma raised the receiver to set it down, her reflection did not move. Her breath hitched. She froze, her eyes wide, her body screaming to run. The reflection's lips parted slowly, forming words she couldn't hear. Emma dropped the receiver with a clatter. The reflection's mouth stretched wider, soundless, as though it were screaming. Emma tore the blanket off her bed and threw it over the mirror, her hands shaking violently. She backed away until she hit the wall, gasping for air. Silence returned. The covered mirror loomed, motionless. Her phone buzzed suddenly on the nightstand, making her flinch. A new notification lit the screen. Friday, 12 a.m. Her blood ran cold. The call hadn't been early at all. She had slept through the entire day, and tomorrow had already come. Emma stumbled backward, her body trembling with shock. She had lost a whole day without knowing. What else had she lost? The apartment seemed to close in, shadows crawling along the walls. She gripped her phone with clammy hands, scrolling through missed messages. There were dozens from Sarah, from her brother, even from her boss, all asking where she was, why she hadn't answered. Her chest tightened. She had been unreachable for 24 hours, but she hadn't moved, hadn't eaten, hadn't lived through it. The rotary phone rang again. Emma screamed, the sound tearing from her throat. She dropped her cell phone and lunged toward the closet. The ringing was louder than before, shaking the walls, rattling the shelves. She ripped open the box and grabbed the receiver, her ears ringing from the force of the sound. Emma, listen. The other voice was hers again, but shredded, broken. Each word stuttered with static. They're inside. Don't trust. The line dissolved into chaos. The shriek of feedback stabbed into her ears, mingled with hundreds of overlapping whispers. Among them, she caught one phrase repeated over and over, "We are tomorrow." Emma clapped her hands over her ears, but the words seemed to seep directly into her skull. She dropped the receiver and kicked the box away, her body trembling violently. The apartment door creaked. Emma spun, her breath ragged. The chair she had wedged under the knob was sliding slowly across the floor, as though pushed from the other side. Her body went cold. She stumbled backward until her shoulders hit the wall. The chair screeched aside. The lock clicked, and the door began to open. The door opened inch by inch, groaning on its hinges. Emma pressed herself against the wall, her body trembling, her throat too tight to scream. The hallway light spilled into her apartment, but no one stepped through. The space beyond the door was empty, yawning, too dark. It was darker than the hallway should be, as if the light had been swallowed before it reached inside. Emma's breath came shallow and fast. Then came the footsteps, slow, deliberate, dragging across the threshold. Yet the doorway remained empty. Emma's chest constricted. She stumbled backward, her eyes locked on the open door. The air grew colder, her breath fogging in the dim glow. "Who's there?" she whispered, though her voice was barely a sound. Silence answered. Then, from deep within the darkness of the hall, her own voice whispered back, Me. Emma's knees nearly buckled. She clutched the wall for support, her nails scraping against the paint. The dragging footsteps grew louder, closer, though nothing filled the doorway. Shadows seeped across the floor like liquid, stretching into the room. Emma turned and bolted toward her bedroom. She slammed the door shut, shoved the chair back beneath the knob, and pressed her weight against it. The air on the other side thickened, the shadows pooling against the crack under the door. They pulsed like something alive, reaching inward. Her phone buzzed violently on the nightstand, screen lighting up. Incoming call. Unknown. Emma snatched it up with shaking hands and answered. The static hissed for a moment, then her other self spoke. Emma, listen to me. They're not outside anymore. They're in your time now. Emma's voice cracked. What are they? They are tomorrow. They feed on what hasn't happened yet. Every time you answer, you give them more. Emma's stomach dropped. Then why keep calling me? The voice hesitated, trembling. Because you're me, and I already failed. Emma's grip on the phone slipped, her palm slick with sweat. Fail how? The line distorted, the words breaking apart. I opened the door. Emma's pulse thudded painfully. She stared at her barricaded bedroom door, shadows still pressing beneath it. The voice on the line grew urgent. You can't let them touch you. Promise me. Don't let them in. Emma shook her head violently, tears welling. Already, the line crackled, cutting her off. Her own broken whisper bled through. It's too late. The call dropped. The shadows under her bedroom door thickened, rising like smoke. The chair under the knob rattled violently. The wood groaned as if something enormous leaned against it. Emma stumbled back, clutching the phone like a weapon, though she knew it was useless. The mirror on her dresser shuddered, the blanket slipping from its frame. Beneath the fabric, faint shapes writhed, faces pressing against the surface as though trapped inside the glass. Their mouths opened soundlessly, their eyes black voids. Emma screamed, grabbing the blanket and yanking it tighter over the mirror, but the fabric bulged outward as though hands pressed from the other side. The door jolted violently. The chair slid, screeching across the floor. Emma's breath came in shallow gasps. Her gaze darted between the door and the mirror, every muscle locked in panic. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. The chair stilled. The mirror went still beneath the blanket. The air grew crushingly silent. Emma stood trembling, her ears straining, waiting for the next assault. Then the rotary phone rang. Emma's heart lurched. The sound echoed impossibly from the closet, even though the box was across the apartment. It rang louder than ever, each chime pounding through her chest. She staggered toward it, her body moving against her will. Her trembling hands dug through the box and lifted the receiver. This time, the voice was clear. It was her, but older, tired. Emma, it said, listen to me. They will never stop. Every call you answer brings them closer. Every warning only delays them. You can't change tomorrow. Emma shook her head, sobbing. Then what do I do? How do I stop this? The older voice wavered, heavy with despair. You don't. You survive as long as you can. That's all I could do. That's all any of us could do. Emma's pulse thundered. Any of us? The line crackled. Behind the voice, dozens more joined in. Her voice, over and over, each warped in different ways. Some were weeping, some screaming, some whispering in resignation. Her stomach lurched. She pressed the receiver tighter. How many of me are there? The chorus of voices rose, layered in agony. One phrase emerged through the cacophony, repeated again and again. Too many tomorrows. The line went dead. Emma dropped the receiver, her body trembling violently. The phone in the box vibrated, rattling against the cardboard, as though trying to claw its way out. She stumbled backward, her back hitting the wall. The front door creaked again. Emma turned, her blood running cold. The shadows stretched across the floor, rising higher, twisting into faint outlines of figures. They had no faces, only shifting static where their features should be. They moved closer, their steps silent, their forms flickering as though caught between existence and absence. Emma backed away, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her promise echoed in her mind. Don't open the door. Don't let them in. But the door was already open, and tomorrow had already arrived. The shadows drifted into the apartment like smoke given form. Their bodies flickered, bending the air around them as though reality itself strained to hold their weight. Emma pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding in her throat. One of the figures tilted its head toward her. Where a face should have been static churned, a shifting blur of features half-formed, dissolving before they could settle. Yet in the mess of distortion, she swore she saw fragments of her own reflection. Emma's stomach lurched. The chorus of whispers returned, vibrating inside her skull. Thousands of versions of her voice, each overlapping, each broken in a different way. Emma, 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 let us in. We are you. We are tomorrow. She clapped her hands over her ears, but the sound wasn't in the room. It was in her. The figure stepped closer. The temperature dropped, frost creeping along the edges of the window glass. Emma's breath fogged in the air as she backed toward her bedroom. Her heel struck something. She looked down. The rotary phone had moved. It sat in the middle of the floor now, receiver resting beside it, its cord twitching like a snake. Emma's throat tightened. She crouched and picked it up with trembling hands. "Hello," she whispered. The static roared for a moment, then settled. A voice spoke. Not hers this time. A man's voice. Low, calm, measured. They're closer than they've ever been. Emma's pulse spiked. "Who are you?" The voice ignored the question. "You shouldn't have answered. But you always do." Emma's chest constricted. "Always?" "Yes. Every version of you. Every path. Every tomorrow." Emma's grip tightened on the receiver. "Then how do I end it? How do I make it stop?" The man's voice paused, as though weighing the answer. "You can't end it, but you can decide where it leads." Her breath caught. "What does that mean?" The line went silent. Then, faintly, her own voice returned, raspy, breaking. "Don't let them touch you. Whatever happens, don't let them touch you." The receiver grew hot in her hand. She dropped it with a yelp, the plastic clattering against the floor. The figures were nearly upon her now, their distorted faces flickering faster, fragments of familiar features flashing in the static. Sarah's eyes, her brother's jawline, even her own smile stretched unnaturally wide. Emma's back hit the bedroom door. The chair beneath the knob rattled violently, as though something inside wanted out. Her eyes darted toward the covered mirror. The blanket trembled, bulges pressing outward as though countless hands clawed from within. She was trapped. Shadows closing in, voices filling her head, every escape blocked. Then silence. The figures froze. The blanket over the mirror stilled. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Emma's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She turned her head slowly, terror rising in her throat. The screen glowed with a new notification. Saturday, 12 a.m. She had lost another day. Emma snatched the phone with trembling hands, scrolling through messages. Dozens more had piled up, her brother begging her to call, Sarah saying she was worried sick, work emails threatening to escalate her absence. Her vision blurred with tears. The world was slipping away from her, time erasing itself every time the phone rang. The rotary phone rang again. The figures twitched, their static faces tilting toward the sound. Emma screamed and grabbed the receiver, desperate for answers. The man's voice returned, calm and steady. "You see it now? They don't chase you through space. They chase you through time." Emma's words tumbled out, frantic. "Why me? Why my tomorrows?" "Because you picked up," the voice said simply. Her blood ran cold. The man continued. "The phone is a bridge. Every ring is a crack between now and what comes next. You open it wider each time you answer, and they crawl through." Emma's hands shook violently. "Then why call me at all?" A pause. Then, quietly, "Because even tomorrow is afraid of them." The line warped, voices bleeding through again. Dozens of her own voices, screaming, begging, whispering, all overlapping in unbearable chaos. The man's voice rose above them. "You have one choice left, Emma. When it rings tomorrow, don't answer." The line went dead. Emma lowered the receiver slowly, her breath ragged. The figures remained frozen in place, flickering faintly, as though waiting. She crawled backward on her bed, clutching her cell phone to her chest. She pulled the blanket tighter over the mirror, though she knew it was useless. And she waited. Minutes dragged into hours, each one suffocating. She didn't dare close her eyes. The shadows lingered in the corners, twitching occasionally, but never moving closer. When dawn finally bled into the sky, they dissolved like smoke, vanishing into the morning light. Emma collapsed on her bed, her body trembling with exhaustion. She had survived another night, but she knew it wasn't over. Tomorrow would still come, and the phone would still ring. Emma didn't sleep. She couldn't. Every creak of the building, every flicker of light felt like the start of another intrusion. Her eyes burned, her body ached, but she stayed awake, clutching her cell phone like a lifeline. The man's words replayed in her head. When it rings tomorrow, don't answer. That was the plan. Simple. She would resist. She would survive. But as the day bled into evening, a gnawing dread settled into her stomach. What if not answering made things worse? What if the call was the only thing keeping her anchored to reality? By nightfall, she had barricaded every door and window with furniture. The mirror remained covered, its surface occasionally twitching beneath the blanket like something trapped inside. The rotary phone sat in its box in the middle of the living room, silent but heavy with anticipation. Her digital clock glowed on the coffee table. 11:57 p.m. Emma's breath grew shallow. Her pulse hammered in her ears. 11:59. She gripped the edge of the couch, her nails digging into the fabric. 12 Uhr nachts. The phone rang. The sound ripped through the silence like a blade, each chime rattling the windows. Emma flinched, her whole body screaming to move, to pick it up. Her muscles ached with the pull of the sound, as if the ring were a hook dragging at her chest. She clenched her fists, shaking her head violently. No, not this time. The phone rang again, louder. Her cell phone lit up simultaneously. Unknown caller. She ignored it, squeezing her eyes shut. The rotary phone rattled in its box, the receiver twitching as though begging to be lifted. The shadows in the corners of the room thickened, stretching toward it like roots. Don't answer, Emma whispered to herself, rocking back and forth. Don't answer, don't answer. The ringing stopped. Her eyes snapped open. The silence was deafening. For a moment, hope flickered in her chest. Then, her cell phone buzzed again. A notification appeared across the lock screen. Sunday, 12 a.m. Her stomach lurched. She had lost another day, without even answering. The shadows surged across the room, swirling like smoke in a storm. Faces flickered in the dark, warped and broken, mouths stretching in silent screams. Emma staggered to her feet, her body trembling violently. No, I didn't pick up. You can't take it. The mirror's blanket tore free, ripped upward as though yanked from the inside. The glass beneath pulsed like water, her reflection rippling across its surface. Dozens of other Emmas stared back, each distorted, some bloodless, some hollow-eyed, some fractured into static. They pressed against the glass, their palms slapping silently, their mouths forming desperate pleas. One of them spoke, her voice bleeding into the room, perfectly clear. You already answered, Emma. You always answer. Emma stumbled back, her knees nearly buckling. No, I didn't. The figures in the room advanced, their static faces flickering faster, fragments of Sarah, her brother, and countless strangers bleeding through. Their whispers filled the air, suffocating her. We are tomorrow. We are you. We are endless. The rotary phone shrieked again. Emma clamped her hands over her ears, screaming. She grabbed the box and hurled it against the wall. The receiver spilled free, swinging wildly. But the ringing didn't stop. It grew louder, sharper. Her cell phone buzzed violently, screen glowing white. Emma's reflection in the mirror moved on its own, pressing its hands against the glass. Its mouth opened wider and wider, stretching into an impossible grin. The ringing and buzzing merged into one deafening tone. Emma fell to her knees, sobbing. Please, just tell me how to stop it. The man's voice cut through the noise one last time. calm and steady. "You can't stop tomorrow, Emma. You can only join it." The mirror shattered. Glass exploded outward, shards slicing through the air without a sound. But what poured from the frame wasn't glass. It was static, a flood of white noise spilling like liquid into the room. The figures collapsed into it, their bodies dissolving as though swallowed whole. Emma's reflection reached through the fractured surface, its hand wrapping around her wrist. The touch was ice, burning and numbing all at once. Emma screamed and tried to pull away, but her strength collapsed. The reflection's grip tightened, dragging her toward the mirror. The voices rose in unison, thousands of Emmas screaming together. "Welcome to tomorrow." The static swallowed her. The apartment was silent. The shattered mirror glistened faintly in the dim light, its frame empty, nothing behind it but wall. The rotary phone lay in pieces across the floor, its bell silent at last. Emma's cell phone buzzed once more. The screen lit with a new notification. Monday, 12 a.m. The phone stopped vibrating. The apartment remained still. And in the faint reflection of the black screen, Emma's face stared back, smiling.